I have come to the final conclusion of the 5 personality traits that your mortgage broker must possess that separates them from the softcock Teletubby brokers to the Top Gun John Wick broker that gets things done. And make sure when you choose your next mortgage broker, they contain these 5 traits. Again, this is not about endorsing you using my service. I don't give a fuck if you use me at all, but pay attention because the next mortgage broker might break or make your loan. Trait number 1, they have to have a thick face. That's trait number 1. This is the mortgage broker over here, and this is their face. Layers and layers of concrete of thick face. And you're probably wondering, why would a mortgage broker require a thick face, especially when they're just dealing with your home loan and representing your interest with the banks? Well, they have to deal with the assessors, the bank assessors. And these cunts, they are overworked zombies, alright? Not to their fault. I don't say they are cunts, just the position, the status quo they're in terms of I'm a mortgage broker and I'm dealing with them to get my client's home loan approved. But they get so overworked with the big corporate banks they work for. They have a volume of deals they have to go through per day. And sometimes they just skim over the deal. You know, sometimes it's too hard. They just assess things on a very surface level. And about 80% of the time when you lodge a deal into these banks and meet these assessors, and the deal is kind of like tricky and complicated, they usually come back with conditions or lesser borrowing power that your client wants you to get, which is usually higher than what these guys are willing to give. And you really need, as a mortgage broker, to have a freaking thick face to keep challenging them over and over again until they finally give up and press approve. And if your mortgage broker has a very thin face in terms of the way they get hurt by certain things that are said by the assessor, by the rejection offered by the assessor, and they go, oh, you know what? That's okay. All right, I'll just tell my client that that's all they can borrow. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to hang up now. And trait number 2 is they don't take things personally, which means their EQ, the emotional quotient, is very high. For example, they'll be able to hold themselves regardless of personal attacks from mainly the clients, which is you, right? For example, the assessor will call me and go, oh, you know, the client can't borrow such and such because of certain things. And then they call the client, or I call the client, and I go, oh, sorry, these are the conditions, and I'll try to mitigate it. But on that call, they're like, oh, you know, I thought you were good. You know, I saw you on TikTok. I thought you were good. Oh, now I bought this property, and you know, I thought it was good. And then usually some brokers will just take it personally, and it affects their groove, and then it affects the way they represent the deal. But the ability to have a thick face, which is the first trait of a mortgage broker, and then followed by the second trait of not taking things personally, the mortgage broker is able to keep calm and collected and be professional throughout the emotional response of the client to look at the North Star, which is to get the loan approved. Which leads to the third trait. The mortgage broker you choose needs to be able to be, a long-term solution thinker. What that means is, for example, the North Star is to settle the property on time, right? And we only got 2 weeks because the client came to you in the third week before it's supposed to settle. And the North Star is to settle on time. But there are conditions like, oh, you got to cancel a few credit cards, or you need to inject some cash over here. And the client goes, well, I don't really want to do that. But then as a mortgage broker with long-term vision, you need to say, hey, we need to settle on time. Maybe after settlement, after 3 months of the property being settled, we can revalue the property, pull out the equity from that property and pay yourself back. So that leads to the fourth term and the fourth trait. And the fourth trait is the ability to be a good negotiator. He or she needs to be able to negotiate the terms of the North Star between the client, which is over here, and the assessor. All right? Sometimes there's a give and take, especially when the deal is complex. There's a give and take to reach settlement, which is North Star. Sometimes the client doesn't see that. I don't want to let go of my credit card. I don't want to do X and Y and Z. The assessor is like, well, I don't want to assess on that because, it doesn't service. I had a deal with a client who requested for a 5 years interest only on an investment loan. That was like line drawn in the sand. I want that. The assessor goes, we can't do that, okay? if you do 5 years interest only, I'll decline a deal. It won't work. All right. So as a negotiator that sits in the middle, I'll go back to the client. Can we do 3 years interest only? The client's like, I don't know, maybe. Well, would they approve the loan? I said, look, I have to get back to the assessor. When I go back to the assessor, does it service on 3 years interest only? Oh, I don't know. You gotta let me know. Do the servicing calculate and let me know. And obviously, I've done my research. It does service. So on 3 years interest only, can you get the loan approved? And like, I'll do numbers, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, it does. So why didn't you offer it in the first place? Which leads to the final trait. You gotta be a freaking mofro, a gangster from Cabramatta, from the bloody Asian hood. You know, like to the assessor. Why didn't you just tell me in the first place, you motherfucker? I told you that I want the deal settled on this date. You could have told me the client could have reduced the interest only to 3 years to approve it. Instead, you just said no, I'm going to decline on 5 years and just sat on the deal for a week. My client settles in fucking 1 week, you motherfucker. And then the assessor goes, oh shit, bro, chill the fuck out. All right, mate, all right. Just don't make the complaint to my team leader or whatever. I'm going to approve it right now, okay? Okay, I'll give your client 4 years, okay? That's closer to 5 years, all right? You happy now? So there you have it, guys. To be a great mortgage broker, to sum up these 5 traits, you gotta be a gangster, yo. Because I'm telling you guys, if you enlist a mortgage broker who is a pussy pants Teletubby broker, who is just so polite, doesn't want to ruffle any feathers, there is no way they have a chance against these ass assessors. Because their job is to decline your ass, yo. I'm sorry, guys, this is just a rant, all right? This whole month, I've got about 4 to 5 freaking assessors in trouble because they first didn't want to do the deal or nearly about to decline it. And then I escalated the shit out of them. I got them replaced. There were some guarantor loans, SMSF loans, commercial loans, just freaking incompetent people working for these big corporate banks where I, Mr. Q, have to come in and fucking pop a bullet in their ass. Yo, that's it. I'm done.